Grace Mitchell stood in the cold metal room and stared at the 5 old men sitting behind the long table. These were the leaders of Earth. These were the people who decided the future of all humans. And right now, they were asking her to do something impossible. "You want me to marry an alien," Grace said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking at her sides. Admiral Stone, the oldest of the 5, nodded slowly. "Commander Mitchell, the Volanti Empire is our only hope. The Devourer Swarm has destroyed 12 human colonies in the last 2 years. We cannot fight them alone." Grace knew this. She had seen the reports. She had watched the videos of entire planets burning. The Devourers were not like any enemy humans had ever faced. They did not want land or resources. They simply wanted to consume every living thing. Every living thing, every planet, everything. "The Volanti are powerful," Admiral Stone continued. "Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are stronger, but they do not respect us. They see humans as weak, as primitive." "So you want to sell me to them," Grace said. "Like a gift, like a peace offering." The Admiral's face did not change. "Prince Kale has agreed to take a human wife. This marriage will unite our species. It will force the Volanti to protect Earth." Grace wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something. But she was a soldier. She had trained for 20 years to control her emotions. So she simply stood there and felt the anger burn inside her chest. "I refuse," she said. The room went silent. The 5 leaders looked at each other. Then Admiral Stone spoke again. "Commander Mitchell, this is not a request. This is an order." Grace closed her eyes. She thought about her mother back on Earth. She thought about the small house in Montana where she grew up. She thought about the mountains and the rivers and the sky that was so blue it hurt to look at Dot. She opened her eyes. "Then I have no choice." 3 days later, Grace stood on the deck of a human transport ship. Behind her stood 3 people. These were her crew. These were her friends. And they had refused to let her go alone. Daniel Park was her second in command. He was tall and quiet and rarely smiled. But Grace knew that he would die for her without a second thought. He had served with her for 10 years. That Mia Torres was the ship's engineer. She was small and loud and always laughing. She could fix any machine with her eyes closed. She had volunteered for this mission the moment she heard about it. James Cole was the medic. He was gentle and kind and hated violence. But he was also the best doctor Grace had ever known. He said he came because someone needed to keep them all alive. "You did not have to come," Grace said to them. Daniel shook his head. "You are our commander. Where you go, we go." Maya grinned. "Besides, I want to see what alien engines look like. I bet they are not as good as ours." James just smiled and said nothing. But his eyes said everything. The Volanti ship appeared on their screens an hour later. It was enormous. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. The ship was shaped like a great silver bird with wings that stretched for miles. It made the human transport look like a toy. "That is the royal flagship," Daniel said quietly. "The Volanti Emperor himself travels on that ship." Grace watched the ship grow larger and larger on the screen. Soon, she would be inside it. Soon, she would meet Prince Kale. Soon, her old life would be over. The docking was smooth and silent. The Volanti were masters of technology. Their doors opened without sound. Their floors were made of some strange material that felt like glass but was warm to the touch. A group of Volanti guards waited for them. They were tall, almost 7 feet. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were completely black. They wore silver armor that seemed to glow with inner light. One of the guards stepped forward. "You are the human female?" Grace lifted her chin. "I am Commander Grace Mitchell of Earth's United Fleet." The guard looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. Follow. They walked through endless corridors. The ship was like a city inside. There were gardens with strange plants. There were fountains with water that flowed upward instead of down. There were windows that showed the stars outside, so close that Grace felt she could touch them. Finally, they reached a great hall. And there, standing on a raised platform, were two figures. The first was Prince Kale. He was tall, even for a Volante. His skin was darker blue than the others, and his eyes held a cold intelligence. He wore a crown of silver metal, and he looked at Grace like she was an insect. The second figure was smaller. A female. She was beautiful in a strange way, with long silver hair and eyes that burned with anger. This was Princess Lyra, the prince's younger sister, and the hatred in her face was impossible to miss. So this is the human, Princess Lyra said. Her voice was like ice. This is what my brother must marry to save their pathetic planet. Grace did not look away. I did not ask for this marriage, but I will honor it. Lyra laughed. It was not a kind sound. Honor? What do humans know of honor? You are children. You live for what, 80 years? 90? We live for 1,000. What can you possibly offer us? Prince Kale raised a hand, and his sister fell silent. He stepped down from the platform and walked toward Grace. He moved like water, smooth and dangerous. He stopped in front of her. He was so tall that Grace had to look up to see his face. You are small, he said. Yes, Grace replied. But I am here. For a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. Then it was gone. The wedding will be in 30 days, he said. Until then, you will stay in the guest quarters. You will not leave without permission. You will not speak to anyone without permission. You will obey. Grace felt the anger rise again, but she pushed it down. I understand. Kale turned and walked away. Lyra followed him, but she looked back at Grace one last time. Her eyes held a promise. A threat. This is not over, that look said. I will destroy you. That night, Grace sat alone in her room. It was beautiful, with soft beds and strange art on the walls. But it felt like a prison. Daniel knocked on the door and entered. Are you all right? Grace looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. No, she said honestly. But I will survive this. I have to. Daniel sat beside her. We are with you, Commander. Whatever happens. Grace nodded. She did not know what the next 30 days would bring. She did not know if she would live or die. But she knew one thing for certain. She would not break. She would not bow. She would show these aliens what humans were made of, even if it killed her. The message came on the third morning. A guard entered Grace's room and dropped a scroll on her table. It was made of some kind of metal, and the words glowed blue when she touched it. The Princess Lyra has requested that you participate in the traditional trials, the guard said. It is an honor given to all who wish to join the royal family. Grace read the scroll. The words were cold and formal, but she understood what they really meant. This was not an honor. This was a trap. What are these trials? She asked. The guard's face showed nothing. Tests of body, mind, and spirit. Many Volante warriors have attempted them. Few have succeeded. Grace put down the scroll. And if I refuse, then the wedding will be canceled, and your planet will burn. She had no choice. She knew that. So she simply nodded and said, When do we begin? The first trial was combat. They put Grace in a circular arena made of black stone. The ceiling was high above, and thousands of Volantes sat in the seats around her. They whispered and pointed. Some of them laughed. Princess Lyra sat in the royal box, watching with cold eyes. Prince Kale was beside her, but his face showed no emotion. The gate on the other side of the arena opened. A Volante warrior stepped out. He was massive, at least 8 feet tall. His muscles looked like they were carved from stone. In his hands, he held 2 curved blades. "This is Captain Vorn," the announcer called out. "He has killed 40 enemies in single combat. He has never lost." Grace held her weapon. It was a simple metal staff. Nothing more. The fight lasted 3 minutes. Vorn was fast, much faster than any human could ever be. His blades cut through the air like lightning. Grace dodged the first strike. She blocked the second, but the third hit her shoulder and sent her flying across the arena. She hit the ground hard. Blood poured from her wound. The crowd cheered. Vorn walked toward her slowly. "Stay down, little human. Accept defeat." Grace pushed herself up. Her arm was shaking. Her vision was blurry. But she stood. "No," she said. Vorn struck again. This time, he hit her leg. She fell. He kicked her in the ribs. She heard something crack, but she stood up again. The crowd went quiet. They had expected her to cry. They had expected her to beg. But this small human just kept standing up. Vorn and hit her 5 more times. Each time she fell. Each time she rose. Finally, the bell rang. The trial was over. Grace had not won. But she had not surrendered either. Princess Lyra's face was dark with anger. This was not what she had planned. The second trial was isolation. They put Grace in a small room with no windows. No food, no water, no light. She was supposed to stay there for 5 days. The first day was not hard. Grace sat in the darkness and thought about home. She remembered her mother's cooking. She remembered the way the sun felt on her skin. The second day was harder. Her stomach hurt from hunger. Her mouth was dry. The third day was terrible. She started seeing things in the darkness. Shadows that moved. Faces that watched her. She knew they were not real, but they felt real. On the 4th night, the door opened just a crack. A hand reached in. It was Daniel. "Take this," he whispered. He pushed a small bottle of water and a piece of bread through the gap. Grace grabbed his hand. "Daniel, no. If they catch you, they will kill you." "Then they will kill me," he said simply. "I am not leaving you to die." The door closed. Grace drank the water slowly. She ate the bread 1 tiny piece at a time. And she survived. On the 5th day, the door opened fully. Grace walked out into the light. Her legs were weak. Her body was thin. But her eyes were still strong. Princess Lyra was waiting. "You should be dead," she said. Grace smiled. It hurt her cracked lips, but she smiled anyway. "Sorry to disappoint you." The third trial was the mind test. They brought Grace to a dark room filled with strange machines. A Volante priest stood in the center, wearing robes that seemed to move on their own. "This trial tests your mental strength," the priest said. "I will enter your mind. I will search for your fears, your secrets, your weaknesses. If you resist, you pass. If you break, you fail." Grace sat in the chair. Metal bands locked around her wrists. She could not move. The priest placed his hands on her head. And then the pain began. It felt like fire inside her skull. Like 1,000 needles pushing into her brain. She could feel him searching, digging, tearing through her memories. He found her fear of the dark. He made her see endless blackness. He found her guilt about soldiers she had lost. He made her see their faces, accusing her. He found her loneliness. He made her feel completely alone in the universe. But Grace fought back. Every time he tried to break her, she filled her mind with something else. She thought about her mother's garden, the smell of roses in summer, the sound of bees in the flowers, She thought about her father's laugh, deep and warm and full of love. He had died when she was young, but she still remembered that laugh. She thought about Earth, the mountains of Montana, the rivers that sparkled in the sunlight, the sky that went on forever. The priest pushed harder. Grace pushed back. For 3 hours, they fought inside her mind. The priest threw everything he had at her. Nightmares, terrors, horrors, beyond imagination. But Grace held on to her memories. She held on to her love. She held on to her hope. Finally, the priest stepped back. His face was covered in sweat. His hands were shaking. "Impossible," he whispered. "No one has ever resisted this long." Grace opened her eyes. Tears were running down her face. But she was still there. She was still herself. Princess Lyra stood in the doorway. Her face was pale. For the first time, she looked uncertain. That night, Daniel came to Grace's room to check on her. Mia and James were with him. "You are insane," Mia said, but she was smiling. "Absolutely insane." James checked Grace's wounds. His hands were gentle. "You need rest. Real rest. These trials are killing you." Grace lay back on the bed. Every part of her body hurt. One more trial left. Then it is over. Daniel sat beside her. "The whole ship is talking about you. The Volanthi cannot believe what they are seeing. A human who will not break." "I am not special," Grace said quietly. "Any human would do the same." "That is exactly the point," James said. "They thought we were weak. They thought we would surrender easily. Now they are beginning to wonder if they were wrong." Grace closed her eyes. Tomorrow was the final trial. She did not know what it would be. She did not know if she would survive. But she knew one thing. She would face it the same way she had faced everything else. Standing up. Moving forward. Refusing to quit. Because that was what humans did. That was who they were. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They were not the most powerful. But they never stopped trying. They never stopped hoping. They never stopped fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. In the royal quarters, Princess Lyra sat alone. She was thinking about what she had seen. The human woman should have been broken by now. Any Volanthi would have been. But this Grace Mitchell just kept going. It did not make sense. Humans were weak. Everyone knew this. Their bodies were fragile. Their lives were short. They had nothing to offer. And yet, this woman refused to die. She refused to surrender. She refused to give Lyra what she wanted. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something strange in her heart. It was not respect. Not yet. But it was curiosity. What made these humans so stubborn? What gave them the strength to keep fighting when all hope was gone? She did not know. But she was beginning to want to find out. The final trial was supposed to happen at sunrise. Grace woke early and dressed in the simple clothes they had given her. Her body was still sore from the other trials. Her wounds were still healing. But she was ready. Then the alarm started. The sound was terrible. It filled every corridor, every room, every corner of the ship. Red lights flashed on the walls. The floor shook beneath Grace's feet. Daniel burst through her door. His face was pale. Devourers. A whole fleet of them. They came out of nowhere. Grace's blood went cold. The Devourers. The monsters that ate worlds. The enemy that had destroyed everything they touched. "How many ships?" she asked. "At least 30. Maybe more. The Volanthi are trying to fight back, but..." Daniel stopped. He did not need to say more. His eyes said everything. They were losing. Grace ran through the corridors with her crew behind her. All around them, chaos ruled. Volanthi soldiers rushed past, shouting orders. Explosions rocked the ship. The lights flickered and died. They reached a viewing window and stopped. What Grace saw made her heart freeze. The Devourer ships were everywhere. They were black and twisted, like dead things floating in space. They moved in strange patterns, almost like insects. And they were tearing the Volanti fleet apart, as Grace watched. A Volanti cruiser exploded in the flames. Then another. Then another. "We need to help," Mia said. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were determined. "How?" James asked. "We are not soldiers. We do not have weapons." Grace looked around. The Volanti were fighting, but they were fighting wrong. They stood in straight lines. They advanced in neat formations. They followed rules of honor and tradition, but the Devourers did not care about honor. They swarmed. They attacked from every direction. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation. "The Volanti do not know how to fight like this," Grace said quietly. "They have never faced an enemy that does not follow rules." "But we have," Daniel said. He understood what Grace was thinking. Humans have fought dirty wars for thousands of years. Grace nodded. She made a decision. Find survivors. Find anyone who can fight. We are taking control of this situation. They moved through the ship like ghosts. Grace gathered everyone she could find. Volanti guards who had lost their commanders. Engineers who had never held a weapon. Servants who were hiding in corners. Some of the Volanti refused to follow a human. They said it was shameful. Grace did not argue with them. She simply kept moving, kept gathering, kept building her small army. Soon, she had almost 50 people. Most of them were scared. Most of them did not know what they were doing. But they were willing to try. "Listen to me," Grace said. Her voice was calm and strong. "The Devourers have breached the lower decks. They are heading for the reactor room. If they reach it, this whole ship will explode." A young Volanti soldier spoke up. "How do you know this?" "Because it is what I would do," Grace replied. "Hit the heart. Kill the ship. Move on to the next target." She pulled up a map of the ship on a nearby screen. "We cannot fight them head-on. There are too many of them. So we will not fight fair." She pointed to different corridors. "We will set traps here, here, and here. We will seal these doors. We will force them to come through this corridor, one at a time." A Volanti officer shook his head. "This is not honorable combat. We do not fight like cowards hiding in shadows." Grace turned to him. Her eyes were hard. "Your honor will not save this ship. My tactics will. You can help me, or you can die with your pride. Choose now." The officer stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. They worked fast. Mia led a team to set up explosive traps using power conduits. Daniel organized the fighters into small groups. James prepared a medical station in a protected area. The Devourers came 20 minutes later. They were horrible. They looked almost human, but wrong. Their skin was gray and stretched. Their mouths were too wide, filled with sharp teeth. Their eyes were empty, like there was nothing inside them. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. They simply attacked. The first wave hit the traps. Explosions tore through the corridor, and dozens of Devourers fell. But more came behind them, climbing over the bodies of their dead. "Hold the line," Grace shouted. She stood at the front, a weapon in each hand. The Volanti soldiers fought beside her. They were stronger and faster than humans. Their weapons cut through Devourer flesh like butter. But there were so many enemies. One Devourer got past the line and jumped at a young Volanti guard. Grace threw herself forward and tackled the creature. They rolled across the floor, fighting. The Devourer's claws cut her arm. Its teeth snapped at her face. Grace shoved her weapon into its chest and fired. The creature went still. She stood up, bleeding, and kept fighting. The battle lasted for hours. They pushed back the Devourers inch by inch, corridor by corridor. The floor was covered with bodies. The walls were covered with blood. Then the worst moment came. A group of Devourers broke through a side passage. They were heading straight for the royal escape pods, where Princess Lyra and Prince Kale were supposed to evacuate. "We need to stop them," Daniel shouted. "But if we leave this corridor, they will break through from behind." Grace looked at the situation. There were no good choices. Only bad ones and worse ones. "I will go," Mia said suddenly. She was covered in oil and blood, but her eyes were calm. "I know how to seal that passage. I can overload the power system and collapse it." "That will kill you," James said. His voice was barely a whisper. Mia smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a peaceful one. "I know, but it will save everyone else." Grace grabbed her arm. "Mia, no. There has to be another way." "There is not," Mia said gently. She pulled free from Grace's grip. "Commander, you taught me that some things are worth dying for. Let me prove you were right." Before anyone could stop her, Mia ran toward the side passage. She disappeared into the smoke and flames. 2 minutes later, the explosion came. The whole ship shook. The passage collapsed, burying the Devourers under tons of metal. Mia was gone. Grace felt something break inside her. But she did not stop. She could not stop. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was still a battle to win. They fought for 3 more hours. Slowly, the Devourer attacks grew weaker. The enemy was running out of soldiers. And the Volanthi reinforcements were finally arriving. When the last Devourer fell, Grace dropped her weapon and sank to her knees. All around her, soldiers were cheering. Volanthi and humans alike were hugging each other, crying, laughing. They had won. James walked over to a wounded Volanthi guard. The guard's leg was badly hurt. He needed surgery immediately. "Let me help you," James said. The guard looked at him with surprise. "You would help me? I treated your people with disgust." James knelt beside him and opened his medical kit. "That does not matter right now. You are hurt. I am a doctor." It is simple. He worked for an hour, carefully fixing the guard's leg. He did not ask for thanks. He did not ask for anything. Nearby, Princess Lyra stood in the doorway. She had seen everything. She had seen the human engineer sacrifice herself to save Volanthi lives. She had seen the human medic treat a stranger with gentle hands. She had seen something she did not understand. Why? Why would they do this? The Volanthi had treated them like animals. They had tried to break them. They had laughed at them. And yet, when the danger came, the humans fought to protect everyone. They gave their lives for people who hated them. Lyra opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in her life, the princess had nothing to say. She was silent. The ship limped through space like a wounded animal. Half of its engines were destroyed. Hundreds of its people were dead. But it was moving. It was alive. And that was more than anyone had expected. Grace sat in the medical bay, staring at the wall. A bandage covered the wounds on her arm. Her ribs were wrapped tight, but the pain in her body was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. Mia was gone. She kept seeing it over and over. Mia running toward the explosion. Mia smiling that sad, peaceful smile. Mia saying goodbye without saying the word. The door opened. Grace expected Daniel or James. Instead, she saw Princess Lyra. The princess stood in the doorway for a long moment. She looked different somehow. The coldness in her eyes was gone. In its place was something else. Confusion, maybe? Or wonder. "May I enter?" Lyra asked quietly. Grace nodded. She did not have the energy to fight anymore. Lyra walked into the room and sat down across from Grace. For a long time, Neither of them spoke. The ship hummed around them. The stars moved slowly past the window. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. Why did she do it? Grace knew who she meant. Mia? Yes, the engineer. She died to save this ship. To save Valanti lives. Lyra's voice was almost a whisper. Why? Grace thought about the question. It was simple, but the answer was not. Because that is who she was, she said finally. That is who we are. I do not understand. Lyra leaned forward. We treated you terribly. We laughed at you. We tried to break you. And yet, when the moment came, you fought for us. You died for us. Grace looked at the princess. Do you think we help people because they deserve it? Lyra frowned. Is that not how it works? You protect those who are worthy of protection. No, Grace said softly. That is not how humans think. We do not help people because they deserve it. We help because we need to be the kind of people who help. Lyra shook her head. That makes no sense. Maybe not to you. Grace turned to look out the window. Humans live short lives. We know that every moment is precious. We know that we will die someday, probably sooner than we want. So we choose how we want to live. We choose what kind of people we want to be. And you choose to sacrifice yourselves for strangers? Sometimes. When it matters. When there is no other way. Grace paused. Mia did not die because she thought you were worthy. She died because she could not live with herself if she did nothing. Lyra was silent for a long time. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes were focused on something far away. Your lives are so short, she said finally. 80 years. 90 at most. We live for 1,000. Every year is nothing to us. But to you, every year is a treasure. Yes, and yet you spend those years on strangers. On people who hate you. On causes that may never succeed. Lyra's voice cracked slightly. How is that possible? Grace smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. Maybe that is exactly why. We do not have time to waste on hate. We do not have time to wait for people to deserve our help. We just do what needs to be done, and we hope that it matters. That night, Lyra went to the ship's archive. She accessed the files on human history. She had never bothered to look at them before. Humans were primitive, everyone said. Their history was short and meaningless, but now she wanted to know. She watched for hours. She saw humans running into burning buildings to save people they had never met. She saw doctors traveling to sick villages, knowing they might catch the disease themselves. She saw soldiers jumping on explosives to save their friends. She saw something called the Holocaust, and the humans who hid strangers in their homes, even though it meant death. She saw earthquakes and floods and disasters, and the humans who rushed toward the danger instead of away. She saw ordinary people giving food to the hungry, giving money to the poor, giving blood to the sick, giving time to the lonely dot over and over, the same pattern. Humans helping, humans sacrificing, humans caring about people they would never know. Then she found Mia's file. There was a video attached. It was recorded seconds before the explosion. Mia had known she was about to die, and she had taken the time to leave a message. Lyra pressed play. Mia appeared on the screen. She was covered in smoke and blood. Behind her, the corridor was on fire, but her face was calm. This message is for my mom, Mia said. Her voice was steady. Mom, if you are watching this, it means I did not make it home. I am sorry. I know I promised to be careful. She paused. Tears were running down her face, but she kept talking. I just want you to know that I love you. I have always loved you. And I am not scared. I am not sad. Because I know that what I am doing matters. I am saving people, Mom. Maybe hundreds of them. Maybe more. She smiled through the tears. Tell everyone that I did something good. Tell them that Mia Torres died doing something good. The video ended. Lyra sat in the darkness. Her body was shaking. Something wet was falling down her face. It took her a moment to realize what it was. Tears. She had not cried since she was a child. Valanthe did not cry. It was considered weak. But right now, she could not stop. This woman, this short-lived, fragile human, had faced death with a smile. She had thought only of her mother. She had wanted only to be remembered for doing good. How was this possible? How could such small creatures carry such enormous hearts? The next morning, Lyra found Grace in the corridor. Grace was walking slowly, still recovering from her injuries. But she stopped when she saw the princess. Lyra looked different. Her eyes were red from crying. Her face was softer than before. I watched her message, Lyra said. The engineer, Mia. Grace nodded. She had watched it too, 100 times. She thought about her mother, Lyra continued. In her last moments, she thought about the person she loved. Yes, Lyra stepped closer. I have lived for 300 years. I have seen battles and victories and conquests. I have watched empires rise and fall. But I have never seen anything like that message. She reached out and took Grace's hand. It was a strange gesture, awkward and uncertain. Valanthe did not touch like this. I was wrong about your people, Lyra said quietly. I thought you were weak because you die easily. But now I think maybe you are strong because you know you will die. Grace felt tears in her own eyes. Mia would have liked hearing that. Tell me about her, Lyra said. Please, I want to know who she was. So Grace told her. She told her about how Mia loved to laugh, how she could fix any machine with nothing but determination and courage, how she sang terrible songs while she worked, how she believed that every problem had a solution if you tried hard enough. Lyra listened to every word. And when Grace was done, the princess made a promise. I will not forget her, Lyra said. I will live for 1,000 more years, and I will carry her memory with me. I will tell her story to everyone I meet. Grace squeezed her hand. Thank you. Lyra looked at her with new eyes. No, thank you for showing me what I was too blind to see. She paused, then added quietly, I think maybe your people are the bravest in all the galaxy. Not because you are not afraid, but because you are afraid and you act anyway. Grace smiled through her tears. That is exactly right, she said. That is exactly who we are. The wedding day arrived with golden light. The great hall of the Valanthe flagship had been repaired and decorated with flowers from a dozen different worlds. Thousands of people filled the seats. Valanthe nobles in silver robes, ambassadors from allied planets, and in the front row, wearing their cleanest uniforms, sat Daniel and James. Grace stood at the entrance to the hall. She wore a dress of white and gold, made by Valanthe tailors who had never made human clothes before. They had asked her 100 questions about human customs. They had tried so hard to get everything right. She looked different now. The wounds from the battle had healed, leaving thin scars on her arms and face. But her eyes were the same, strong, determined, unbroken. A servant approached her. It is time, Commander. Grace took a deep breath. This was the moment she had dreaded for so long. The moment when she would give up her freedom for the sake of her planet. But somehow, it did not feel as terrible as she had expected. She walked down the long aisle toward the raised platform. Every step echoed in the silent hall. Every eye was on her. Prince Kale waited at the front. He was dressed in formal armor, silver and blue. His face was calm, unreadable. But something in his eyes had changed since the battle. There was a warmth there that had not existed before Grace reached the platform and climbed the steps. She stood before Cale, looking up at his tall figure. The priest stepped forward to begin the ceremony. But before he could speak, Cale raised his hand. "Wait," he said. His voice filled the hall. Everyone went silent. The priest looked confused. This was not part of the tradition. Cale turned to face the crowd. "Before we continue, I must speak." He looked at Grace. Then, slowly, he did something that made everyone gasp. He bowed to her. The Prince of the Volanti Empire, heir to the most powerful throne in the galaxy, lowered himself before a human. "I have watched your people," Cale said, his voice strong and clear. "I have seen what they do when everything is hopeless, when death is certain, when there is nothing to gain." He straightened and faced the crowd. They fight anyway. They sacrifice anyway. They love anyway. The hall was completely silent. No one had ever seen anything like this. "For 300 years, we have called humans primitive," Cale continued. "We laughed at their short lives. We mocked their small bodies. We believed we were better because we were stronger and older." He paused. "We were wrong." The crowd began to whisper. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. But many looked thoughtful. "These humans carry something that we have forgotten," Cale said. "A fire that makes them run toward danger instead of away. A love that extends beyond blood and species. A hope that refuses to die no matter how dark the night becomes." He turned back to Grace. "This woman stood against impossible odds. She led our soldiers when our commanders fell. She fought beside us when she could have run. And her people gave their lives to save strangers who had treated them with contempt." He reached out and took Grace's hands in his. His touch was gentle. "I do not marry her because Earth needs our protection. I marry her because we need to learn what she knows. We need to remember what we have lost." Then something even more surprising happened. Princess Lyra stood up from her seat. She walked to the front of the hall and climbed the steps to the platform. Everyone expected her to object. They remembered how she had treated Grace. They remembered her hatred and disgust. But Lyra did not object. Instead, she knelt before Grace. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. The princess was kneeling to a human. It was unthinkable. "I tried to destroy you," Lyra said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "I wanted to prove that your people were worthless. I wanted to see you break." She looked up. Her eyes were wet with tears. "Instead, you proved that my people have become worthy of nothing. We have grown cold. We have forgotten what it means to truly care. We have become so focused on living long that we have forgotten how to live well." She reached out and touched Grace's hand. "Teach us," she said. "Teach us to burn the way you do. Teach us to love strangers. Teach us to hope when hope is gone." Grace looked at this proud princess, kneeling before her, asking to learn. And she understood that this moment was bigger than a wedding. It was the beginning of something new. She helped Lyra stand. "We do not burn alone," Grace said gently. "That is the whole point. The fire is not just inside one person. It spreads. It grows. It becomes something bigger than any of us." She looked out at the crowd. Thousands of faces looked back at her. "You do not need to learn from us," she said. "You just need to remember. Somewhere inside you, you have the same fire. Everyone does. You just have to choose to let it burn." The ceremony continued, but it was different now. The words were not about submission or duty. They were about partnership, about two peoples joining together to face the darkness. When the priest announced them married, the crowd did not just applaud. They roared. Volanthi and humans alike stood and cheered. That night, there was a celebration unlike any the galaxy had seen. The Lanthy nobles danced with human soldiers. Engineers shared drinks with alien scientists. Enemies became friends. Daniel stood by a window, watching the stars. James was beside him. Mia should be here, James said quietly. Daniel nodded. She is here. In a way. Everything that happened today, everything that changed, it started with her. He raised his glass. To Mia Torres, who showed the galaxy what humans are made of. James raised his glass too. To Mia. Across the galaxy, word spread about what had happened on the Volanthi flagship. Stories were told about the human commander who would not break. About the engineer who gave her life for strangers. About the medic who healed an enemy without asking for thanks. Other species began to pay attention. They had always ignored humans. Too small, too weak, too short-lived. But now they wondered if they had been wrong. And in the dark spaces between stars, the Devourer's swarm watched and calculated. They had destroyed thousands of species. They had consumed countless worlds. They had never been stopped, but now they faced something new. An alliance growing stronger every day. Two peoples learning from each other. And at the heart of it all, those strange, stubborn, beautiful humans. The swarm analyzed the data. They reviewed the battle on the flagship. They studied how the humans had fought, how they had sacrificed, how they had refused to surrender. And for the first time in their ancient existence, the Devourers felt something they had never felt before. These humans were not like the others. They did not fight for territory or resources. They did not fight for survival alone. They fought for something bigger, something the Devourers could not understand. They fought for each other. Back on the flagship, Grace stood on the observation deck with Kale by her side. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and beautiful. What happens now? Kale asked. Grace smiled. Now we build something new. Together. She leaned against the window. Somewhere out there is Earth, my home. And now it is protected. Not just by your ships and weapons, but by something stronger. By what? Kale asked. By a hope, Grace said simply. By the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. By the knowledge that we are not alone. Kale put his arm around her. It was an awkward gesture. Volanthi were not used to such things. But he was learning. I am glad you came here, he said quietly. Even though you did not want to. Grace thought about the journey. The pain. The fear. The loss. Mia's smile. Lyra's tears. Daniel's loyalty. James's kindness. I am glad too, she said. I never thought I would say that. But I am. She looked up at the stars. This is just the beginning, she said. The Devourers will come again. There will be more battles, more sacrifices, more tears. Are you afraid? Kale asked. Grace smiled. Always. But fear is not the same as weakness. Fear just means you understand what you might lose. She turned to face him. We humans have a saying. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. Kale nodded slowly. And what is more important to you? Grace thought about the question. She thought about Earth, about her mother's garden, about Mia's sacrifice, about the future they were building together. Everything, she said. Everything is more important than fear. Love, hope, family, friends, the chance to make tomorrow better than today. She took his hand. That is what humans carry inside us. That is why we never stop fighting. Not because we are brave, but because we care too much to quit. Kale squeezed her hand gently. Then we will learn to carry it too, he said. Together. And somewhere in the darkness, the stars seemed to shine just a little bit brighter, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting, hoping, because finally, The galaxy was learning what humans had always known, that the strongest force in existence is not power or weapons or technology, it is love. And love never gives up.